Ciao Michele.
La telecamera oscurata, Ale.
Sì, è quella no, perché non si accende? Sto usando quella sbagliata.
Hello.
Hello,
Happy
hello.
Monday, everybody. Welcome back, Amy. So I think we have a bit of a critical mass. Some people will join probably very quickly, but I think we can start at least with the announcement. So this is the 3rd of April, 2023, 1 month to the end of the first quarter of the year. So we have some announcement, most of the people being off for Easter and some lucky ones having also the Friday off because of public holidays in some countries. So I'll let you go through those ones. I think discussion topics. Amy, the first one is yours.
Before we jump onto those ones though, do we have release management coverage? Are we running deployments as normal on 10th?
Yes,
good
we do.
question.
For AMER
back.
time, I'm gonna be available.
You, Vladimir, are going to be on Monday the 10th?
Oh, no, I will
Okay.
be off for the public holidays, like Friday and Monday. I will be off because it's
Okay,
public
so
holidays.
we actually need to look at that then.
Let's get a plan for those because I don't think we usually PCL those because it's not public holidays for everybody.
I'm going to open an issue for that. We can continue there.
Have it. Cool. So yes, so 16.0 is approaching. So I wanted to just share a few things because there are a bunch of things in progress already, but maybe not everybody has seen all of these. So thank you for all of those who have already done some work to help us prepare for this stuff. Just some links there. There is a coordination epic, and you can see linked off that epic. Sam has a bunch of issues open where he's planning kind of comms throughout the company and with users as well. So you can see those. Ruben and Steve are doing a super job of preparing the release prep, what to expect issue. Once we've got that, we're happy with it. I suggest we can just begin sharing it. Like there's probably no too early moment to begin letting the stage groups know that, particularly this time around, that we will be cutting the release quite early. And then there's also the additional piece, which is we potentially need to do some prep to be ready for these breaking changes coming in. So thank you for all of those who've reviewed some of those so far. What I'm going to do is turn that into a proper project so we can actually then plan what needs to happen. The moment it looks like possibly most, if maybe I'll go with most, are things that possibly reliability will be more involved with. But we do just want to make sure that we don't accidentally miss something which will cause us problems on, say, pre or release or those sorts of like prep environments. So I'll see what I can pull together there, and we may potentially need to schedule some work around that stuff in the next, like from next week, in the next couple of weeks. Does anyone have any questions or other concerns about 16.0?
I think Sam was investigating how to deploy all the breaking changes throughout this period. Was there any conclusion to that? Are they going to be deployed under a feature flag, or they are going to be deployed at any moment?
Ideally under a feature flag, but not all. Like where possible, they will be. The stage groups will probably figure that out case by case. From our side, there's nothing special we need to do. Our kind of what to expect issue covers everything really. So stage groups will coordinate from there. Awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
So for B, discussion point B, I wanted to share, I know some of you have seen some of these bits already about release manager metrics. I wanted to share with you what I have so far. It's certainly work in progress. Let me share the patch releases because it's a nice clean one, and actually it's also at a fairly complete state. So I'll show you what I have, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what I'm trying to think for the next iterations. So patch releases. I've decided for the releases, I was hoping to be able to do these things by milestone, but actually it's quite difficult because of security releases spanning multiple milestones and multiple weeks. So just for ease and to try and give it a little bit of consistency, I'm just going to look at these on a release by release basis, and then we can work out how we put those together to give a kind of milestone view. So patch releases are looking pretty good. This is all the data we have available for patch releases because this goes back to the beginning of Slack time. But still, I was pretty pleased to see that for the last 5 releases, it's been relatively stable. So what I've tried to do here, because I don't want to maybe assume what the interesting data will be until we start to see the patterns, I've tried to cover it from different angles. So I know Alessi, I mentioned last week about patch releases might be interesting in terms of just like the number of days we spend working on them. It's actually really consistent. It's usually around 2 days. We had one that was on 1 day, which Ahmad went like rocket through and got that done. So nice work. But we've also had one that was 3 days. So 2 days seems to be about the amount of time. One of the big variants we see really just depends on, as the day goes, whether the really long running tasks end up running overnight so that we're not actually sitting watching them, versus if you're actually waiting for packages to build and it's the middle of your day, of course, they still take hours to build. So that's like one of the big variants. I've captured number of manual steps because I think this will be an interesting one. We'll see more in the security releases for us just to, if something is going to take multiple days, it would be amazing if it was quite a hands-off multiple days process, so we don't have to keep doing loads of little tasks. The variance on patch releases is coming down to when we have to actually modify the plan to handle specific cases. So you see it varying just a little bit. That's, I guess, a good indicator as well of just the slightly invisible behind the scenes work of release managers having to investigate an issue, make a plan, update an issue, and kind of respond to it. So I think that's an interesting one to note. So far this year, all of our patch releases have been within our current maintenance policy. I think that's probably an indication that we're putting more non-security fixes into security releases. So that's a good thing. And I've got the number of changes included in a release. I was curious to see whether size of release adds complexity. I suspect it doesn't, for reasons I'll show you in a second. But anyway, it's useful to have it tracked so we can get a rough average size for a patch release. And then on to the interesting bits. So I have tried to capture the kind of the sort of beginning to end working time of a patch release. In the wall time of process. This is, I think, relevant, not because you're necessarily working on it all that time, but this is the amount of time you'll have it on your mind as a release manager. So you will know this thing kind of exists. So I know it adds some weight, even if it's not necessarily that you spend, say, like 28 hours pressing buttons. Having said that, for the actual active time, what I've tried to do, I've left some more notes here so you can dig through, but what I've tried to do is actually use the activity log of the issues so you can see when things start and end. It's coming up quite consistent. At the moment, it looks like a patch release takes us about 10 hours of active work. Often that will be spread across different release managers and different shifts, but that looks like, from looking through Slack, that is a reasonable estimate. I think that we are actively working on a patch release for 10 hours. So patch releases are looking really nice in that they're very stable. That looks like a nice consistent, we haven't, in these 5 patch releases, nothing has changed. This is the same process. the same template. So the next patch release will be very interesting. We should be able to see some differences coming in from the pilot patch release process.
I have a couple of questions.
Go for it.
So questions, remarks, random ideas. So first of all, it would be nice to see the effects on MTTP or number of deployments of running a patch release. So what does it mean that 15.7.3 run in 9.5 hour wall time compared to the regular workflow of a release manager compared to something that took 47 hours, right?
Right, yes. So let me get to this, right? So actually, you're right. So this is where the piecing them together, I think will be interesting. I made an estimate. I haven't done anything with this. I've made an estimate that within a typical week, we have 82 hours of release management available. This is assuming we have half of Graham's time. On a week like this, we don't, right? So what I'm going to be really curious to see, I don't know how easy it will be to calculate this up, but what will be really interesting is to see how close to 82 we get in a typical week, right? So not every week is the same. So say, for example, on a week where we spend 3 days doing a security release and then we do a patch, plus you've got all of this stuff on deployments, I bet we get very close. Maybe we even exceed 82. And I think that's where we can start to get a feel for the effort. Because I think if we're always running at 100%, we can see why it's so hard.
Yeah, I was even thinking, maybe just looking at the number of promotion. I mean, they depend on incident and things like that.
Though, right? Like not so much for patch releases. So that's
yeah, but in comparison, so what happens to the number of deployments during a patch release? So how does one process affect the other one?
Oh, I see what you mean.
And then the other thing that I wanted to mention, or even ask Ahmad if he remembers, is that if it's possible that the 15.7.3 was one of those lucky patch release when you just run the merge phase and everything works out of the box, because timing looks like everything was working and there was no merge conflict, everything was ready, and boom, you get the package out and that's it. It takes that amount of time.
I think it was the case, yeah.
It looks like, I think the other thing was it was one of those rare times where the publishing just worked. Because like this was like earlier in the year, publishing was real quick. Yeah, so there's definitely some big variance for sure.
So this is kind of set the baseline for what to expect next.
Exactly.
It should be less than this 9.5. And the thing that we remove is the preparation branch and all this time.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully
1 or 2 hours less.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, hopefully so. That's what I think we can hope to see.
So Ahmad has set a new bar for all of us to achieve, eh?
Pretty much. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions about patch releases? So I'll stick this in an issue as well and explain some bits so you can also take a look in your own time. But I did want to just quickly show off security releases, which I'm trying to bring into the same format as the patch releases. These are, okay, so the bad news on this one. So again, I suspected that the number of vulnerabilities we deal with in a patch release would be visible in the data, like the amount of time we spent. Now, actually, that's really not the case. So that was quite interesting. So I don't want to make you all feel like even worse, but like this patch release that we did at the end of January was super painful. And we actually ended up, same format as I've used for the patch releases, just as a few more sections to security release issue. I've tried to use the issues to break things up. So we ended up spending nearly 50 hours actively working on this release. And there were only 5 fixes. That was really bad returns for our work. So this one was super interesting. Like this is the one with an exception, which I haven't managed to get on any of the others. Again, I've left a note which links, but this one had very visible kind of stuff was broken outside the security release, which blocked us. And we were kind of like hands off until it was unblocked, which was a broken master, which broke the security mirror. We had to reschedule the security release because of that. So there was a couple of hours of admin, and we had a bunch of QA tests failing on the release environment, which also blocked us for a lot of hours. Like, it didn't look like we were actively working on that. So security releases are super hands-on, time intensive, and a couple of really interesting things I think that jumped out as I should just add, it's been quite manual gathering this data, but it's fascinating because actually when we're in the midst of a release, it's amazing the lots of little things that we just go, oh, that doesn't work. Well, we haven't got time, let's just move on. And actually going back a little bit later and looking through it, it's quite interesting to see the patterns. One thing to note is the number of manual steps on the security release is massively increasing. So we had 57-ish, my counting might be slightly around 57 in January. There are 85 currently. So we can do ourselves some favors by cutting that down. We also have got, so this doesn't quite work out because I've made a bit of an assumption on the first steps. But anyway, we largely spend some hours on these kind of like first steps of like little notification tasks and like tell this team that we're getting going on something, and like update little bits and pieces, like little general admin. And the same on the kind of post-publishing, we spend at least an hour, often 2, on just doing the kind of like version creations and syncing and lots of little admin-y tasks. So it feels like there should be a lot of easy wins to cut that down, but they are time consuming, very, very time consuming. So I'm going to keep going on this stuff. I will be putting up an issue. There's a security release issue already up. If you want to discuss that, thank you for everyone who's left comments so far. What I would do is very much, it's a bit iterative at the moment, because as I go through the different types of releases in particular, I'll try and standardize these as much as I can. So if I get interesting data on a different type of release, I'll see if I can match up onto a different one so we can compare things. And then I'll also have a think, if anyone has any great ideas, it would be so much better if this wasn't hidden in a spreadsheet. I think worst case, I'll create an epic similar to the deployment blockers, so we can start to have this stuff living in issues and summarized in there so that we can actually find it again. But if anyone actually has nicer ideas, then let me know, because this will be useful for us, of course, but it's also going to be useful for helping people outside of our delivery understand why we're quite busy.
I have a question here. I mean, a question. It's just like a thought, and maybe it's the wrong one, but Jenny, the dashboard that we have to understand how much time we're actually losing also due to failures, is it something we could actually cross-reference with this data to understand if there is any kind of correlation?
Probably.
In the case we could filter those per security release or per patch release. I don't know if it's possible or not.
Because what we're tracking right now is more so the auto deploy processes, like retries and failures, right? And yeah, we can definitely cross-reference the times that we spend on that.
Yeah, but we don't have anything that is not auto deploy for the retries.
But it makes sense for security releases, because that's one of the major problem of security releases, because we first do the auto deploy, which is not true for the patches, because in theory, development prepare patches after the things landed on GitLab.com.
Yeah.
There's no, for patch release, there's no real active check. We need to wait for this to be deployed and things like that, because it's supposed to already have happened. So can you scroll a little bit up, Amy, please? Because you have dates. Yeah, so probably we can check those metrics that Jenny worked on by those dates, because every deployment in that date range is a security auto deploy, and so affects our ability to actually deploy. There will be gaps like before the first deployment and after publishing, because it's just a date, and so maybe we release at early morning, and then, but overall it's kind of it's a good number.
Yeah, that might be nice to add in if we have it already, because I guess what we're going to find with these metrics is there's two angles to improving this stuff. One is we have like easier processes, right? They are like easier to run or faster. So for example, like we do less steps, and the other is that we have less failures.
Yeah. Jenny, do you mind to open an issue, maybe to try to look at that outside of the current epic that we are working on right now, maybe, because, you know, we already only like 3-4 weeks left for that. But if you can open an issue to start to understand if we can correlate those numbers, I think would be great.
Yeah, I think that'll be great too. Okay, I can write that issue up.
Thank you.
Cool. Great. So next steps for this, I'm going to finish adding in last week's security release to get the numbers. And then I'm going to try and do deployments, because I have some stuff for deployments. Deployments I've got on a weekly basis, because that matched up much better with our metrics. So I haven't touched this for a long time. So I'm going to go back and take another look at deployments and see what we can do there. Oh, and the other one I'm going to do for you, Myra, for as the DRI for maintenance policy is also backport requests, because what I want to be able to get to is so that when we come to the deciding next steps for the maintenance policy process, what we can use is the data on how time-consuming a patch release is, how time-consuming are backport requests, and then try and match that up against the impact we think we'll have on the new process. Awesome. Great. Well, I will keep sharing stuff as I go, but I wanted to make sure people could kind of vaguely see and also understand a little bit why there's some random numbers in a spreadsheet, and they're certainly evolving. It's definitely work in progress. If you have questions, feel free to ping me or leave comments on the spreadsheet, and I'll help there as well.
Thank you, Amy. There are no extra discussion topics. Release managers.
Since I was off on Friday, can someone maybe pick this presentation? Myra, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I can take over. Sharing a screen. I am assuming that you are seeing my screen. Please let me know if otherwise. So last week, the incidents were not kind to us. We had too many, which can be seen on the graph, because basically we were promoting half of the packages. We had a security issue, a security incident. Then we had the S1 awful that got a lot of attention, and a lot of minor ones with Q&A and some other deployments. So the graph is not pretty, but I guess it's what we have. We also have this auto deploy fail thing, I think. Yeah, and that is basically because we had the security release. So the packages were out of sync, and by the time the picker tried to run, the commit was not on security, because we also had some merge train failure. So security release. So yay. Okay. Moving on, lead time for changes. I'm not sure why the week is starting on March 28th. I'm sure last month was March 27th, right? But I don't know. Either way, it looks okay-ish. Assuming this bump that we have over here is about the security release and the S1 incident that was delaying GitLab.com. So there is a little nasty bump here. The deployment frequency, yeah, it doesn't look very Right, here we go. Yeah, 3.1 wasn't our best week, but we managed to still do some deployments either way. 25 last week. I think it is a good number considering all the events. And what am I missing? What am I missing? Are those all the graphs? Deployment lead time, perhaps? Oh, we already see this one. Which one am I missing? Deployment, lead time. Are these all? Just 3? Okay, cool. Questions, comments, suggestions?
Do we have the deployment blockers updated? Can we see that?
I just started my day. I'm not sure, but we can take a look. I don't think we have yet, but we can check the issue.
Can we get those updated? Because I think given there was
Yeah.
quite a lot of stuff going on last week.
Yeah, I mean,
it would
look
be
at
great,
that. Yay.
we can follow up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for 44 hours, yikes. 14 production blockers, yikes.
Yeah, we had a very fun week last
Yeah,
week.
and well, we still need to review the additional incidents to check if they also impacted. But yeah.
It's updated. I also have a random question. When we have QA failures, what is the actual process? Do these turn into incidents now, or are these still issues that we create that we work with quality on the release issues?
Yeah, thank you for asking that.
I honestly talk to quality directly, and they point to the issue that they have. And it seems like they fixed most of the kind of lucky tests. But today I had to rerun some quality tests twice, maybe, because they didn't fail. But it used to fail a lot. Like it only worked like from the 3rd time when you click when you deploy. But now it's better, but not ideal though.
Yeah, so last week was also particular for Q&A. We had some flaky failures that I reported on this issue. Basically, they failed the first time, but then after a retry, they work, which it's good, but it is also bad because each retry takes around 10 minutes. So if those pile up, you can start building hours of deployments being blocked. And then, well, you can see we had a lot of occurrences throughout the day.
So we're still basically manually tracking on these things.
Yeah.
Okay, great, awesome.
Yeah, they are covered. So yeah, I will proceed to update the epic.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
One more thing I wanted to add. So currently, we have a version that is good now on prod, but the couple of new versions, so especially like the newest one that we have on in the pipeline and we have in staging, this is actually broken. So there were some AMER that leaked and it's breaking the what does it break? Major bug for the new navigation. So, and I just wanted to say that we should not promote the latest release, and the release that have a revert for this bug is not picked up by packager yet. So we need to wait.
Is there already an incident? Is there already an incident for this?
I just got a there is a discussion in release channel. They just directly pinged us. So I also pinged to you in this thread. So it's
okay. Yeah, I will take a look after this call. But yeah, okay. Thanks.
And
Vladimir.
also, yeah, currently migration post deploy migrations are running. And it's kind of urgent to do. So I got pinged by some other team that they wanted to have it as soon as possible. So.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you. Any other topic to discuss in the recording? No.